Greetings and good day to you. Hope you guys are all having a blessed, beautiful weekend. Going to talk to you a little bit tonight about, or this afternoon, about reality and the situation that I had happen yesterday evening, where I had interactions with law enforcement due to a gentleman aggressively trespassing on a young lady's property. And the law enforcement were notified and showed up at this residence. And the concerns that I have about the lack of education that these officers have. So I'm going to start out by saying Grand Island's finest last night. I feel strongly have dropped the ball and could use some education. So hopefully this reaches you guys. It's not to slander or defame your character, but to help you evolve and gain a little knowledge. So for you officers out there that watch and pay attention, I hope that logic and rational thought and morality, which is ecclesiastical law, will reach you and touch you and help broaden your perspective of reality. Sergeant Riley, B. Riley, number 315 out of Grand Island, Nebraska, was the active commander last night in Grand Island. And the incident pertained to a young man who was harassing a young woman. And of course we stuck around to ensure that she was okay and safe. But when these officers pulled up, Jay Parker and McQuez, 467 and 443, chose to fail to provide their business card. Now, through a great amount of due diligence, they're actually not obligated in any sense of the word or by law to identify themselves. But that presupposes the fact that when they engage you, that you must provide them with credentials. Okay, and credentials normally includes photo ID, age, date of birth, weight, hair color, eye color. In this instance, agents in agency have an identification card from graduating the police academy that has their credentials on it, along with who they're insured and backed by. And the reason that we want this intel is because they're agents in agency. They actually don't have an obligation to we the people. Their job is to generate revenue for the corporation known as the state of Nebraska, or whatever state you're in. That's their true purpose. And as the Supreme Court has recently ruled, and I believe that ruling was unanimous, that officers of the law absolutely have no obligation to protect you or your family. And it was exhibited last night through their actions. When I asked them to identify themselves, of course, they give me a badge number and they give me their first initial and their last name. Okay, the last name is so general as a depictor and a descriptor that it articulates the family of. It doesn't articulate who you are. And the reason that we want this information is because if we're caused any harm, damage, loss, or injury by their dereliction of duty, we need to be able to attach that liability to them through their nomenclature, okay, in their personal capacity. Because again, through my great amount of due diligence that I have done, we find that the underwriters of the insurance companies that provide insurance for said entities that generate revenue for the state have underwritten it in such a way that even your unalienable rights, it is extremely hard to make a claim against. And I know people say, oh, federal court, this, that, and the other. I like to lean upon the private administrative process, because when you're wronged, you don't need 12 people to agree with you. If, I damaged your house, do you really need to articulate to 12 people how I damaged your house? I mean, the damage was done, submit the bill, give them time to respond 10 days, give them an additional 10 days if they request it, by written form, acknowledging the fact that they have received your bill, And of course, you want to send them a certified copy of the bill, and you always want to hold the true bill because you're the holder in due course that way. If you give away the original document, you have lost the value, okay? So to elaborate on this, when I asked them for their business cards and to get the commanding officer on the scene, they were reluctant, but did do it. And when the sergeant got there, I announced who I was and asked for his business card. And he said, I'm not going to give them to you. And I'm not going to authorize my men to give them to you. We have no obligation to do what you're saying, and we're not going to participate. So I asked him, do you have business cards? And he says, absolutely, we have them. So you're using discretion and deciding not to provide your credentials. So my question to you is, are you using discretion in such a manner that you are now prohibiting me from being able to fill out a true and correct affidavit under the sworn penalties and pains of perjury for the things that I witnessed with firsthand knowledge? Now, he said no, and he wanted to know what I meant by that. And what I said was, I need to know all parties that are involved, so when I make a true, correct, and accurate record of what has transpired, everybody that is now here currently is listed properly. He said, well, I've already told you my name. Well, that's fine and dandy. So I asked him this. Okay, you've told me your name and I've told you mine, but how many different ways can you spell Derek? He says, a lot, many ways you can spell Derek. I said, how many ways can you spell your name? He goes, quite a few. I said, have I made my poignant point yet? Now, he kind of overlooked that, you see, because the point was, if you are not precise with how you write things, there are ways for intelligent people to maneuver out of them, okay? So you need these credentials. You need this information. I then asked if I could go ahead and fill out a report. Now, this is what bothered me. Sergeant Riley, badge number 315, perpetuates somehow that his record will be available to me, and that they're not going to allow me to file a report at this moment in time, and that they weren't going to provide me any documentation to complete a report based upon my firsthand knowledge as a witness. So what he said to me is that his report would supersede basically my firsthand knowledge, even though they weren't there when things transpired. Isn't that interesting? How does a man create a report with zero firsthand knowledge, all done, mind you, by hearsay from one party, and fail to take statements from 8 other people that witnessed the interactions? Okay? Now, as the conversation developed, it very quickly became apparent that the assailant had actually been acquaintances with Jay Parker, number 467, okay? That was the conflict of interest here, and quickly I identified that. I articulated that there was a conflict of interest here, as Jay Parker clearly had a personal vested interest in this matter on behalf of the assailant. And when I identified that, the first thing Jay Parker stated was, well, I wasn't the first officer on scene. This doesn't have anything to do with me. But mind you, both officers, the inferior officers prior to the sergeant showing up, did in fact show up simultaneously. This is cause for concern, okay? If we're expected to produce identification, and if we fail to produce identification, they like to throw out allegations of impeding or obstructing an officer's investigation in his professional capacity. Well, when we say professional capacity, we understand very quickly, or in his line of business, we understand very quickly that he's engaged in commerce. So I articulated to them under 27 CFR 277211, all crimes are commercial, and because all crimes are commercial, I just need to know who I'm doing business with. So when I write this true and correct affidavit under the sworn pains and penalties of perjury and the eternal damnation of my soul, I need to make sure that it is very acute and accurate to detail. They refused. So I asked them, what merits and constitutes you actually handing out your business card? And he would not articulate what would actually bring him to provide said credentials. But he proclaimed that this instance doesn't merit that kind of action from him, even though I had requested it. And I find that a little distasteful and concerning. Okay, I asked them if they take an oath to the Constitution, if they take an oath to the United States Constitution. We know the answer is yes, but they're just oblivious to it. I articulated to them multiple times, I'm not here to create controversy. I'm here to provide what you need to make sure that the victim is not caused any more harm, injury, damage, or loss than she's already encountered this evening. Now they proceed to let the assailant travel freely after this endeavor. They walk back to their automobiles, and the assailant comes back to the sidewalk, which is a public easement, mind you, but he has been trespassed at this point, but still he's on the public easement, shouting at this young lady. And I yell at the sergeant, are you going to continue to allow this man to harass and badger this woman after she has legitimately called you guys and informed you that, she has an issue over here with a gentleman who will not leave, even though he's been advised that it is time for him to go and that he's no longer welcome there and has been effectively trespassed. The sergeant yells at the gentleman and says, get going. Okay, well, again, they're allowed to use discretion, but when they were across the road, they told him to leave, and he comes across the road again, yet to engage the victim and victimize her that much more. So at what point does discretion now become a point of action to eliminate the threat? And the fact of the matter is, to not have their credentials, they're liable for allowing somebody to victimize a victim and not take swift, immediate action about it. So not having their credentials makes it extremely difficult to write out a true and correct, accurate report that needs to be done, because in the court of law, although a twisting of the language is unworthy of a judge, and similar is not same, and dissimilar things should not be joined, the manipulation that we see within the court, if you allow them to, by not extrapolating exactly point for point in acute detail what has transpired, if you give them that wiggle room, they will do such. Long story short, I think Captain Elliott, which I don't know if he's the police chief or just the captain, should advise his men that when good American people, or any man or woman for that matter, is asking for said credentials, that they should be provided. I wasn't asking for cell phone numbers. I wasn't asking for their home addresses. What I wanted was their business contact information while they're engaged in commerce. Now, as I started to articulate this fact to him, to the Sergeant Riley, that, this is the reason I need your credentials, in case any harm, damage, loss, or injury is sustained due to your dereliction of duty and failure to assert yourself in a proper manner, discretion or not, I need those credentials. He looks at his boys, waves his finger, and says, we're done here. We're out of here. Now, keep in mind, he didn't get the babysitter's information. He did not get the victim's information from her. He didn't allow 8 people to fill out reports of what had transpired, and alleged and proclaimed that they had their own record that they had created by hearsay, mind you, from the assailant, and that was all they needed. So just cause for concern. And another reason why the Second Amendment is so vital, because, ladies and gentlemen, these agents and agency absolutely have zero obligation to protect you, okay? It is up to you to protect your friends and your family. It is up to you to instill great qualities in your young ones and teach them how to use this beautiful, brilliant mind and to effectively protect themselves. Because when push comes to shove, cops are always minutes away, and they're very rarely there when the actual incident occurs, and it only takes a blink of an eye to lose your loved one and lose your friends and your family, not being able to protect yourself. And so that's the importance that the founding fathers saw in this mystical illusion called government that was created, that was supposed to benefit the people. And we can clearly see that through evolution of time and the dumbing down of the people, that this, in fact, is no longer really the case, that the constitutions have been gutted. They've been turned into corporate charters where statutes, codes, and provisions seemingly trump the original Constitution, which vested the power in we, the people, to govern ourselves and to act accordingly. It presupposes the fact that nobody is competent enough to handle their own affairs, and thus government must step in to do so. But when we have agents and agency that fail to identify, fail to take reports, that's great cause for concern, ladies and gentlemen. With that said, I hope you guys have a blessed Easter. Realize that all glory goes to God, Yahweh, however you would like to say it. I hope that your spirit is high this weekend and you understand the sacrifice of giving up your one and only to save humanity. And that's what Yahweh did for you. Jesus Christ shed his blood for your sins, your debts, whether they be commercial, personal. The blood of Christ was shed for you as surety. And it's important to remember that ecclesiastical law, natural law, God's law trumps all law. And they, through the perversion of language, have seemingly tried to morph man's law to resemble God's law and be superior to God's law. Remember, without a victim, there is no crime. Without a claim or a complaint being made by a man or a woman, what you effectively have is agents and agency that are trained to use very specific terminology and nomenclature to generate revenue for their private corporations and entities for which they are privately contracted with. Okay? So let's evaluate these things. Let's talk to our senators, governors, congressmen, and law enforcement. The other thing that I found disturbing last night was when I suggested, since you're not going to give me your credentials and your business card, I think it's time that we call the sheriff. And he kind of scoffed and laughed and said, if you think the sheriff has superiority over me, he can't tell me what to do. That's a lack of knowledge within the law enforcement community. As I articulated to him, the sheriff in that community was elected by we the people. He has the utmost authority because he was appointed by we the people to supersede any other corporation and the jurisdiction thereof to ensure that they fall within the parameter and the boundaries of being lawful, not necessarily legal. Okay? So talk to your sheriffs about this. When rogue agents and agency are derelict in their duty, we should be able to depend on an educated sheriff to put these people in their place. The voting system and the way that we do things, it's so funny how the school system manipulates your mind to see things as aesthetically pleasing and smooth talking people. We vote for them and we put them in a position of alleged authority. And the problem with that is we don't base our decision on knowledge. We look at them and go, oh, they're aesthetically pleasing, they're physically fit, they're good with their words. But the problem here is we're the ones to blame for not providing tests for these people to take. Most officers I encounter don't know the Constitution or have never even read it. Okay, how do you take an oath, a promise, to defend and protect this nation and the charter for which we stand upon if you don't know it? Okay, and that's a problem with the training and the psychological mind warfare that they impose upon the officers of law. We no longer have peace officers. We have policy enforcers or police officers, and there is a distinct difference in that. So remember to be peaceful, be humble, be loved, show love, and be kind and courteous, because we're all in this together. Whether you wear a shield, a costume on the side of the road, and drive a police car, or you don't, we all have family. Everybody wants to go home at night, and everybody wants to be treated with respect, dignity, honor, and let's have an ascension of the minds. Let's evolve so we can take care of one another, because at the end of the day, that's truly all that matters, that we love our neighbor. It's written in the good book. It's present every day. I mean, if you can help somebody, you have the ability, whether it's financial, physical, maybe somebody just needs a listening ear. Give them your time. Expand your mind. This life is beautiful, and as far as I know, you only get one shot at it. And so don't squander it away. Don't squander it away. And with that said, peace, love, and happiness. Have a beautiful, bright day. Remember, if you can go to jail for not providing identification to an officer, and they will say that you failed to identify, which is a statute and code violation, and that you're impeding or obstructing an officer of the law in his commission of his official duty, which is commercial in nature, okay, then there should be and shall be, according to equity, a quid pro quo, which means you want, I want. You get, I get. Very simple. Logic, common sense, and morality. Very, very simple. So have a great day. And again, when you encounter these agents and agency, forgive them, because if you can't forgive them, you can't expect to be forgiven. Okay? Let's educate. Let's open up those minds. Let's really talk to them about what they're doing and be able to articulate it clearly through posing questions. You don't want to make statements. You want them to think for themselves. Belief is the most powerful thing in the world. I will never change anybody's belief. But what I can do is ask articulate questions with very poignant points and allow their mind to draw the conclusion. That's the voice of a good leader. That's how you lead people to success and greatness. You have to allow their mind to develop and not try and mold it with your opinions or the way that you see things, but allow them to think for themselves. People are brilliant. They're amazing. And the brain is fantastic if you just give people the chance to reflect and look upon what they're doing and think about it. So we try not to make statements, but rather ask questions that would cause them to question their morality, that question the instinct within them and the difference between right and wrong, because quite honestly, ladies and gentlemen, it is black and white and can be no other way. Have a beautiful, blessed Easter. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.